My name is Phyllis, and I am 58 years old. I never expected my fairy tale wedding to turn into a nightmare in seconds. After a whirlwind romance with Derek, I thought I had found true love again. Then came the inheritance from my aunt, changing everything. The moment is seared into my memory. Derek violently pulling our wedding tablecloth, sending everything crashing down, and demanding my inheritance. What happens when the mask falls off the person you just vowed to love forever? Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I prepared a surprise of my own when he stormed off to get his lawyer. I had been a widow for almost 5 years when I met Derek. My first husband, Alan, passed away after 30 years of marriage, leaving me alone, but financially stable with our modest savings and the small business we had built together. I had settled into a quiet life in Portland, finding comfort in my routine, my small circle of friends, and my volunteer work at the local community center. It was at a charity auction for the center that I first encountered Derek. He was tall, distinguished with salt and pepper hair, and a confident smile that lit up the room. At 54, he carried himself with the assurance of someone who had achieved success but remained humble about it. I noticed him bidding generously on several items before he approached me. "That centerpiece would look perfect in your home," he said, gesturing to the floral arrangement I had been admiring. His voice was warm with a slight southern accent that made his words seem like honey. "I'm Derek Williams, new to Portland." I introduced myself, somewhat flustered by his direct attention. "Phyllis Carter. And what makes you think you know what my home looks like?" He laughed, a rich sound that made others around us smile. "I don't, but someone with your elegant taste surely has a home to match." That was the beginning. Coffee after the auction turned into dinner the following week. Derek was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my life story. He told me he was a financial consultant who had recently relocated to Portland after years in Chicago. He spoke about wanting to settle somewhere more peaceful, somewhere he could build a real life with the right person. "I've been married once before," he admitted during our third date. "It ended 15 years ago. No children. We wanted different things in life." The vulnerability in his eyes made me believe every word. Our relationship progressed rapidly. Derek was everything Alan hadn't been, spontaneous, romantic, and effusive with his affection. Where Alan had been steady and practical, Derek was passionate and impulsive. He surprised me with the weekend getaways, brought flowers for no reason, and made me feel desirable in a way I hadn't experienced in years. My best friend Judy, whom I'd known since college, met Derek at a dinner party I hosted 2 months into our relationship. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "He's certainly charming," she said, her tone careful. There's something I can't quite put my finger on. Maybe it's how perfectly he seems to say exactly what you want to hear." I dismissed her concerns as protective instinct. After Alan, I deserve some romance and excitement, don't I? "Of course you do, Phil. Just take your time. There's no rush." But with Derek, everything felt like a wonderful rush. 6 months after we met during a sunset cruise on the Willamette River, he presented a diamond ring that caught the fading light. "Phyllis, meeting you has been the greatest blessing of my life. I don't want to waste another day without you as my wife. Will you marry me?" My heart said yes immediately, but my mind hesitated. Wasn't 6 months too soon? What would my children, both in their 30s with families of their own, think about their mother remarrying so quickly? Yet looking into Derek's earnest eyes, I couldn't imagine saying no. "Yes," I whispered, and he slipped the ring onto my finger before pulling me into a passionate embrace. My son Thomas and daughter Grace were surprised but supportive when I called them with the news. "As long as he makes you happy, Mom," Grace said, though I could hear the reservation in her voice. Derek was eager to set a wedding date, suggesting we marry within 3 months. "When you know," he insisted. "Why wait when we could be starting our life together?" The wedding planning became a whirlwind. Derek had opinions on everything from the venue to the menu, often suggesting more elaborate options than I had envisioned. "Nothing but the best for my bride," he would say whenever I questioned the mounting expenses. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received devastating news. My Aunt Eleanor, my mother's sister, and the woman who had been like a second mother to me, had passed away peacefully in her sleep at 85. Grief-stricken, I considered postponing the wedding, but Derek encouraged me to continue as planned. "Your aunt would want you to celebrate love, not put it on hold," he assured me, holding me close as I cried. Then came the unexpected news that changed everything. Aunt Eleanor, a shrewd businesswoman who had never married or had children, had left her entire estate to me, her only niece. The inheritance included her historic home in Seattle, a diverse investment portfolio, and substantial cash assets totaling nearly $4 million. I was stunned. Though I knew my aunt was comfortable, I had no idea the extent of her wealth. My first thought was gratitude for her generosity, followed quickly by sadness that I couldn't thank her. What I didn't realize then was how this inheritance would reveal the true nature of the man I was about to marry. The call from Aunt Eleanor's lawyer came on a Tuesday morning, just 12 days before our wedding. I sat in stunned silence as Mr. Abernathy detailed the extent of my inheritance. "Eleanor was quite the savvy investor," he explained. "Besides the house in Queen Anne valued at about $1.2 million, there's a stock portfolio worth approximately $2.5 million and liquid assets of around $300,000. I had no idea, I whispered, tears forming. Not for the money, but for the realization that my aunt had planned this final gift so carefully. Eleanor had been my rock after my parents died, and after Alan's passing, she had been the one who encouraged me to rebuild my life. "She wanted you to be secure, Phyllis," Mr. Abernathy continued, "and she trusted your judgment implicitly. There are no conditions attached to this inheritance. It's yours to use as you see fit." After the call, I sat alone in my living room processing this unexpected turn of events. My financial situation had just changed dramatically. Alan and I had lived comfortably but modestly, with enough for retirement but not extravagance. Now, suddenly, I was a wealthy woman. Derek arrived that evening with takeout and a bottle of wine, finding me still somewhat dazed. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, setting down the food. "Is everything all right?" I shared the news about Eleanor's bequest, watching his face carefully. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, certainly, but something else, too. Something calculating. $4 million. He repeated, his voice unnaturally even. "Phyllis, that's incredible. Eleanor was always looking out for you, wasn't she?" He poured us both wine, his hand trembling slightly. "This calls for a toast to Eleanor's memory and her generosity." That night, Derek was especially attentive, holding me close and whispering about how we would honor Eleanor's memory. But there was a new tension in his embrace, an energy I hadn't felt before. The next morning, Derek arrived at my door unexpectedly with coffee and pastries. "I've been thinking," he began casually, "with the wedding so close, and now this inheritance, we should really discuss our financial future." "What do you mean?" I asked, accepting the coffee. "Well, merging our lives means merging our finances, doesn't it? We should talk about joint accounts, investments, that sort of thing." His tone was light, but his eyes were intent. "I am a financial advisor, after all. I could help manage Eleanor's portfolio, probably increase its value substantially." This was the first time Derek had suggested combining our finances. Previously, we had agreed to maintain separate accounts with a joint one for household expenses. His sudden interest made me uneasy. "I think I'd like to get settled as newlyweds before making any big financial decisions," I replied carefully. "Besides, I should honor how Eleanor set things up before changing anything." Derek's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, darling, no rush. I just want what's best for us." Over the next days, I noticed subtle changes in Derek's behavior. Our wedding plans, which had been largely set, suddenly needed upgrades. The reception venue wasn't prestigious enough, the catering menu too simple, the band not well known enough. "We should celebrate in style," he insisted when I questioned the additional expenses. I want everyone to see how special you are to me. More concerning were the casual questions about Eleanor's estate. When would the assets be transferred to me? Was the house in Seattle just an old family property or in a desirable neighborhood? Had I considered selling it? Each question seemed innocent enough on its own, but together they formed a pattern that triggered a growing unease. At Derek's suggestion, we visited a jeweler to look at a special wedding gift for me, and I found myself steered toward the most expensive diamond necklaces. When I expressed hesitation at the extravagance, he whispered, "With your inheritance, you deserve to indulge a little. Eleanor would want you to enjoy her gift." The reference to my aunt's legacy as a means to justify luxury purchases felt wrong, disrespectful to her memory. A week before the wedding, I met with Samuel Goldstein, my longtime financial advisor and lawyer. Derek had asked to join, but I insisted this was something I needed to handle alone. "Congratulations on the upcoming wedding," Samuel said warmly, before his expression turned serious. "Now, regarding Eleanor's estate, we should discuss protection strategies, especially with your marital status changing." "Protection strategies," I echoed. "Yes. While I'm sure your fiancé is wonderful, it's always prudent to separate inherited assets from marital property. A post-nuptial agreement would be advisable, clearly delineating that Eleanor's bequest remains your separate property." Samuel's suggestion made practical sense, but I worried about how Derek would perceive it. Would he feel I didn't trust him? Yet something in me, a quiet voice of caution, agreed with Samuel's advice. When I returned home, Derek was waiting, his casual posture belied by the intensity of his gaze. "How did it go with the lawyer?" he asked immediately. "Fine," I said, deliberately vague. "Just preliminary discussions about the estate administration." "Did you mention our marriage about putting my name on the accounts after the wedding?" His direct question caught me off guard. "We didn't get into specifics yet." I hedged, uncomfortable with his presumption. "There's time for all that after the wedding." Derek's face darkened momentarily before he controlled his expression. "Of course, darling. I just thought as your husband, and with my financial expertise, I could help shoulder that burden." That night, I lay awake long after Derek had gone home, Eleanor's voice seeming to whisper in my memory, "Trust your instincts, Phyllis. They'll never steer you wrong." I had ignored my instincts when they whispered that our relationship was moving too fast. Would I ignore them again, now that they were practically shouting? My wedding day dawned with a perfect blue October sky, the kind of fall day that makes Portland magical. The morning was a flurry of activity, hairstylist, makeup artist, and my daughter Grace helping me into my ivory dress with its subtle beading and elegant silhouette. I had chosen something sophisticated for a second-time bride in her 50s, not a princessy gown, but something that made me feel beautiful and dignified. "You look stunning, Mom," Grace said, adjusting my pearl necklace, a gift from Alan on our 20th anniversary that felt right to wear today, a small connection to my past as I stepped into my future. Yet despite the perfect weather and beautiful preparations, a knot of anxiety had lodged itself in my stomach. I attributed it to normal pre-wedding jitters, though it felt different from the nervous excitement I had experienced before marrying Alan. This was something heavier, more insistent. Grace noticed my distraction. "Are you okay? It's not too late to postpone if you're having doubts." "Just wedding day nerves," I assured her, though even to my own ears, the words lacked conviction. The ceremony was set for 3 o'clock at the Willamette Valley Vineyard, with the reception to follow in the same venue. Derek and I had agreed to a first look before the ceremony, and as I walked through the vineyard to meet him, the knot in my stomach tightened. He turned as I approached, handsome in his dark suit, and for a moment his face showed genuine awe. "Phyllis," he breathed, taking my hands. "You're a vision." The photographer captured our embrace, the vine-covered trellis framing us against the backdrop of rolling hills. It should have been perfect, but Derek seemed distracted, checking his watch twice during our photo session. "We should wrap this up," he said to the photographer after only 15 minutes. "We don't want to keep the guests waiting." The ceremony itself was brief but beautiful. 60 of our closest friends and family gathered in rows of white chairs on the vineyard lawn. My son Thomas walked me down the aisle to Pachelbel's canon, and my longtime friend Pastor Jim officiated. Derek's vows were eloquent, promising to cherish and honor me for all our days. As I recited my own vows, I pushed away the lingering doubts, focusing instead on the hopeful future before us. After the ceremony, cocktail hour began on the terrace overlooking the vineyard. I noticed Derek immediately accepting a tumbler of whiskey, drinking it quickly before getting another. His best man, a colleague named Richard, whom I'd only met twice, engaged him in an intense conversation in the corner. Derek's gestures were agitated, his expression tense. My sister-in-law from my first marriage, Carol, approached with a warm hug. "Beautiful ceremony, Phil. Alan would be happy for you." Her sincerity brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that," I whispered. "Eleanor would be too," she added. "She always wanted you to find joy again." At the mention of my aunt, Derek appeared suddenly at my side, as if her name had summoned him. Discussing the departed today should be about the future, not the past. His tone was light, but there was an edge to it that made Carol raise her eyebrows slightly. As guests shared stories and toasts during the early reception, Derek's impatience became increasingly apparent. He barely touched his appetizers, continued drinking steadily, and seemed annoyed by the heartfelt speeches from my family and friends. When my daughter Grace tearfully mentioned how proud her father and Aunt Eleanor would be of my strength and new happiness, Derek audibly sighed and drained his glass. Judy, seated at our table, leaned over during a lull in the festivities. "Is everything okay with Derek? He seems tense." Before I could answer, Derek returned from the bar, setting down his drink with enough force to slosh some onto the tablecloth. "Phyllis, we need to discuss something before dinner." He took my elbow, guiding me toward a quiet corner. "Can it wait?" I asked, conscious of our guests watching. "We're about to be served." "No, it can't." His grip tightened slightly. "I've been thinking about what you mentioned from your lawyer, about keeping your inheritance separate." I stiffened. "Derek, this isn't the time or place." "When is the time then? You've been avoiding the discussion for days." His voice remained low, but his eyes had hardened. "I thought we were building a life together, sharing everything." "We are, but the inheritance is something special from Eleanor. I'm not comfortable making decisions about it yet." Derek's jaw clenched. "We're married now. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. That's how it works." "That's not actually how inheritance works legally," I replied, my lawyer's explanation fresh in my mind. "Inherited assets remain separate property unless commingled." Something dark flashed across Derek's face. "I see Samuel has been filling your head with ideas about keeping secrets from your husband." "Not secrets, Derek. Just prudent financial planning." "I'm a financial planner," he hissed, then caught himself as a server approached to inform us dinner was being served. We returned to our seats at the head table, Derek's smile firmly back in place for our guests, though it didn't reach his eyes. As the servers brought out the elegant first course, he leaned close to my ear. "After dinner, I have some papers I'd like you to sign. Just a simple agreement about our finances, to protect us both." A chill ran through me. "What kind of papers?" "Nothing complicated, just authorizing me as co-manager of your accounts. Standard newlywed stuff." His casual tone contrasted with the intensity of his gaze. "I haven't agreed to that," I said quietly but firmly. "And I won't be signing anything tonight. This is our wedding, Derek." He took a long sip of wine, his knuckles white around the stem of the glass. "Don't you trust me, Phyllis?" "After everything?" The question hung between us as the main course was served: pan-seared salmon with seasonal vegetables and wild rice. Around us, guests chatted happily, unaware of the tension at the head table. I picked at my food, appetite gone, while Derek drank more and ate little. Judy kept glancing our way, her brow furrowed with concern. My son Thomas also seemed to notice the strained atmosphere, his protective instincts clearly on alert. As dessert was being prepared, Derek pulled a folded document from his inner jacket pocket and placed it beside my plate. "Just look it over," he insisted. "It's for our future." I reluctantly unfolded the paper to find a hastily printed document authorizing Derek as the primary manager of all my financial accounts, including all inherited assets from the estate of Eleanor Mason. The document had spaces for 2 signatures, mine and a notary's. "Derek," I whispered, shock and anger rising, "did you prepare this before our wedding? Were you planning to spring this on me today all along?" His expression hardened, the charming mask slipping further. "I'm trying to build our life together. That money shouldn't sit idle while I have the expertise to grow it. This isn't about growing the money. This is about controlling it." The realization hit me with stunning clarity. Is that what this whirlwind romance was about? Did you know about Eleanor's wealth all along? Derek's face flushed with anger. "Don't be ridiculous. I love you. I just want what's best for us. I won't sign this. Not today. Not ever." I folded the paper and tucked it into my clutch. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Phyllis, don't make a scene. Just sign the paper." "No." The word came out stronger than I expected, empowered by the growing certainty that I had made a terrible mistake. What happened next would be forever etched in my memory and the memories of everyone present. "No." Derek's voice was dangerously soft, barely audible above the clink of silverware and murmur of conversation around us. "After everything I've done, after rushing to marry you, after putting up with your family's constant reminiscing about your precious first husband and dear Aunt Eleanor, you say no to me." I held my ground, though my heart hammered in my chest. "This isn't the time or place, Derek. We can discuss financial arrangements later." His face contorted with a rage I'd never seen before, transforming the handsome features I'd fallen for into something unrecognizable. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the edge of the immaculate white tablecloth and yanked it violently. Time seemed to slow as crystal glasses toppled, plates crashed, and centerpieces tumbled. Wine splashed across my ivory dress like blood. The elegant wedding cake on its stand at the center of our table teetered and then collapsed, sending frosting and cake layers sliding across the floor. A collective gasp rose from our guests as silence descended upon the room. In that awful suspended moment, Derek stood chest heaving and pointed at me accusingly. "You will transfer your inheritance to my name now." His voice boomed across the stunned reception hall. "I didn't waste 6 months on you to walk away with nothing." My mind struggled to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be the man I had just pledged my life to hours earlier. "Derek," I managed, my voice shaking, "you need to calm down. Calm down." He laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "I've been calm for months, playing the perfect gentleman, pretending to be interested in your boring stories, acting like I couldn't wait to build a life with you. All while you've been hiding your fortune consulting lawyers behind my back." Guests began murmuring, some standing uncertainly. My son Thomas started moving toward us, his face dark with protective fury, but I subtly gestured for him to wait. "Is that what this was about?" I asked, finding strength in the clarity of the moment. "The inheritance?" "Don't act so surprised," Derek sneered. "What would a woman your age have that would interest me besides money? Did you really think it was your charm and beauty?" His cruel words struck like physical blows. Judy stood now, her voice sharp with anger. "That's enough, Derek. You need to leave." He ignored her, focusing his rage on me. "Sign the papers, Phyllis. Sign them now, or I swear I'll make your life hell." Something in me shifted then, fear giving way to a cold, clear anger. "I will not sign anything, and I think you should leave." "Fine," he spat. "You think I'm not prepared? I'm getting my lawyer right now. He'll explain your obligations as my wife." He pulled out his phone, jabbing at the screen. "He's already on standby. 15 minutes, Phyllis. You have 15 minutes to come to your senses before I come back with paperwork you can't refuse." With that, he stormed out, leaving behind a devastated reception and 60 witnesses to his true character. For a moment, I sat frozen wine dripping from the table onto my lap cake smeared across the floor, the beautiful decorations in ruins. Then unexpected tears began to fall, not of sadness or humiliation, but of pure, overwhelming relief. The mask had fallen. The truth was exposed. And despite the public embarrassment, I felt as if I narrowly escaped something far worse. Judy was immediately at my side, her arm around my shoulders. "Oh, Phyllis," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I knew something was off about him." My children approached next, Thomas vibrating with protective anger, Grace already on her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said firmly. "No," I said, finding my voice. "No police? Not yet." I looked around at the concerned faces of my loved ones. "But we do need to prepare something for when he returns." Thomas knelt beside my chair. "What do you want to do, Mom?" I took a deep breath, my mind suddenly clear. "If Derek wants paperwork, let's make sure we have some ready for him too." Judy's eyes widened with understanding, and for the first time since the tablecloth went flying, a small smile played at her lips. "Samuel is here as a guest. Your lawyer is literally in this room." As if on cue, Samuel emerged from the crowd, legal briefcase in hand. "Phyllis, I think we need to talk. Immediately." The next 15 minutes were a flurry of focused activity. While hotel staff worked to clean the mess in the reception area, Samuel, Judy, Thomas, Grace, and I retreated to a small conference room the venue manager quickly made available. "I witnessed everything," Samuel said, opening his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Derek's behavior constitutes duress, which would invalidate any document you might sign under such circumstances. But more importantly, I think we need to take immediate protective measures." "What kind of measures?" I asked, still somewhat dazed by the rapid turn of events. "First, I'm calling my associate Jennifer to meet us here. She's a notary. Second, I have some standard documents with me, force of habit, I'm afraid, that we can modify quickly." Samuel pulled out his laptop and began typing rapidly. "What are you preparing?" Thomas asked, standing protectively near me. "A declaration revoking any powers previously granted to Derek Williams, a temporary restraining order application, and most importantly, an annulment petition." Samuel glanced up. "Given that the marriage is less than a day old, and there's clear evidence of fraudulent intent, annulment is preferable to divorce. It's as if the marriage never legally existed." My hands trembled as I accepted a glass of water from Judy. "I can't believe this is happening." "Mom," Grace said gently, taking my hand, "did you notice any warning signs before today?" I thought back over the whirlwind, 6 months with Derek. His rushed proposal, his increasing interest in my finances after Eleanor's death, his insistence on an elaborate wedding. "There were signs," I admitted. "I just didn't want to see them." Samuel continued working while explaining, "The good news is that inherited assets are separate property, not marital property, even without a prenuptial agreement. The fact that you kept the inheritance separate and never commingled funds works in your favor." "What about the marriage license?" I asked suddenly, remembering the document we had signed just hours earlier. "It's been filed, but the annulment will address that," Samuel assured me. "The important thing now is to establish a clear record of what happened and Derek's true intentions." As if reading my thoughts, Judy pulled out her phone. "I have video of the entire incident. I was recording the toasts and just kept recording when Derek started acting strangely." She handed me her phone, and I watched with a surreal detachment as Derek violently pulled the tablecloth and shouted his demands. "That's invaluable evidence," Samuel said, looking up from his typing. "Can you send that to me now?" Thomas, who had been pacing anxiously, stopped suddenly. "What about the other guests? They're witnesses too." "Excellent point," Samuel agreed. "We should collect statements while memories are fresh." Grace volunteered to coordinate this effort, heading back to the reception area with her phone to record brief statements from willing guests. Meanwhile, Judy stayed with me, her steady presence a comfort amidst the chaos. "I knew something was off about him from the start," she said quietly. but I never imagined this. I should have listened to you, I replied, the shock beginning to give way to anger, not just at Derek, but at myself for ignoring the warning signs. Don't do that, Phil, Judy said firmly. Don't blame yourself. Con men are skilled at what they do, and that's what he is, a con man. Samuel looked up from his work. Speaking of which, I think we should run a background check. My firm has access to comprehensive databases. He made a quick call to his office, providing Derek's full name and the date of birth I supplied from the marriage license application. While we waited, Jennifer, Samuel's associate, arrived with her notary seal. Samuel briefed her quickly as he printed documents on the venue's office printer. Mrs. Carter, Jennifer began, then paused. Or do you prefer your first married name? Carter is fine, I said firmly, realizing I had never truly wanted to take Derek's name. Mrs. Carter, I'll need you to read these documents carefully before signing. Nothing is final until you're comfortable. I read through the papers Samuel had prepared, a declaration revoking any financial powers that might be construed as granted through marriage, an application for a temporary restraining order citing the violent behavior witnessed by dozens, and a petition for annulment based on fraud and misrepresentation. As I signed each document, I felt a growing sense of reclaiming my power. The initial shock and humiliation were fading, replaced by resolve. Samuel's phone rang, and he stepped aside to take the call. When he returned, his expression was grim but unsurprised. That was my office with preliminary background information on Derek Williams. It seems this isn't his first attempt at such a scheme. There are records of 2 previous marriages, both to women with significant assets, both ending in contentious divorces, where he attempted to claim large settlements. The confirmation of Derek's true nature hit me like a physical blow, so it was all a lie from the beginning. Most likely, Samuel nodded. My office is continuing to gather information, but this pattern suggests a calculated approach. Just then, Grace returned with several recorded statements from guests who had witnessed Derek's outburst. Everyone wants to help Mom. They're all on your side. Thomas, who had been keeping watch at the door, suddenly straightened. He's back, and he's got someone with him. Samuel gathered the signed and notarized documents. Perfect timing. Are you ready, Phyllis? I stood smoothing my wine-stained dress and taking a deep breath. Yes, let's end this charade. We returned to the reception area, where most guests had remained, forming a protective circle of support. Derek strode in with a nervous-looking man clutching a manila folder. Derek's earlier rage had transformed into smug confidence, apparently believing his intimidation tactics had worked. Phyllis, he called across the room, I hope you've come to your senses. This is Brian Peterson, my attorney. He's prepared the necessary documents to consolidate our finances, as any normal married couple would do. I walked toward him calmly, Samuel at my side, aware that every eye in the room was upon us. The contrast between Derek's confident smirk and the nervous fidgeting of his so-called attorney was striking. Derek, I began, my voice steady and clear. I believe you misunderstand the situation. I've had time to prepare some documents of my own. The confidence in Derek's expression wavered slightly as he registered Samuel's presence beside me. His eyes darted between us, then to the documents in my hand. Who's this? He demanded, gesturing dismissively toward Samuel. Samuel Goldstein, Mrs. Carter's attorney. Samuel replied professionally, extending his business card. And you must be Mr. Williams. Your performance earlier was quite memorable. Derek ignored the card, and the comment turning his attention back to me. Phyllis, this is unnecessary. Brian here has prepared a simple agreement that any reasonable couple would sign. He nodded to his nervous companion, who stepped forward with his folder. Looking closely at Brian, I noticed his rumpled appearance and the slight tremor in his hands as he opened the folder. He didn't carry himself with the confidence of an experienced attorney. Before we proceed with any documents, I said calmly, I'd like to see Mr. Peterson's bar credentials. Brian's eyes widened in panic, and he looked to Derek for guidance. That's ridiculous, Derek scoffed. We don't have time for these games. Samuel stepped forward. Actually, it's standard practice when dealing with legal matters to verify credentials. I'd be happy to show mine. He produced his Bar Association card. Brian took a step back, clutching his folder to his chest. I don't have my credentials with me. Which firm are you with, Mr. Peterson? Samuel inquired politely. He's a private attorney. Derek interjected quickly. Phyllis, this is absurd. Just sign the document so we can get back to our wedding celebration. I looked around at the disrupted reception. The staff had cleared away the broken dishes and food, but the evidence of Derek's outburst remained in the missing centerpieces and tablecloths, in my stained dress, and in the shocked expressions of our guests. I think the celebration ended when you pulled the tablecloth and demanded my inheritance, I said, finding strength in the truth. But you're right about one thing. It's time to sign some papers. I handed Derek the documents Samuel had prepared. These are what I'm willing to sign today. Derek's face darkened as he scanned the first page. A restraining order. Annulment. What the hell is this? The consequences of your actions, Samuel explained calmly. Mrs. Carter is seeking an immediate annulment based on fraud and misrepresentation. The evidence is substantial and includes video recordings of your outburst and numerous witness statements. Derek turned to me, his charm suddenly back in full force. Phyllis, sweetheart, I lost my temper. I admit it. The stress of the wedding, a few too many drinks. I said things I didn't mean. You know how much I love you. The rapid shift in his demeanor was chilling, further confirmation of his manipulation. I don't think you do love me, Derek. I don't think you ever did. That's not true, he insisted, reaching for my hand, which I quickly withdrew. Samuel intervened. Mr. Williams, I should inform you that we've conducted a preliminary background investigation. Your previous marriages and divorce settlements have come to light. The color drained from Derek's face. Brian, seeming to sense the situation deteriorating, began edging toward the exit. You had no right to investigate me, Derek hissed, his charming facade crumbling again. Actually, as Mrs. Carter's attorney protecting her interests, I had every right, Samuel countered, particularly given the circumstances. I stepped forward, finding unexpected strength in the support of those around me. Derek, I think we both know what this marriage was really about. You saw an opportunity when you learned about my inheritance, and you took it. But it's over now. You can't prove anything, he snarled, desperation creeping into his voice. Actually, we can, Judy interjected, stepping up beside me with her phone. I have the entire tablecloth incident on video, including your demand that Phyllis transfer her inheritance to you. Plus, she gestured around the room, about 50 witnesses. Thomas moved closer, his protective presence reassuring. I think it's time for you to leave. Derek's eyes darted around the room, seeming to fully register for the first time the unified front of friends and family surrounding me. His attorney had already slipped out, abandoning him to face the consequences alone. This isn't over, Derek threatened, jabbing a finger toward me. You're still my wife. I have rights. Not for long, Samuel replied calmly. The annulment petition has already been processed electronically. Given the circumstances and evidence, I anticipate the court will act swiftly. Additionally, the temporary restraining order prohibits you from contacting Mrs. Carter or approaching her residence. I watched the realization dawn on Derek's face that his scheme had not only failed, but backfired spectacularly. His calculated plan to secure my inheritance had instead exposed him completely. Security is waiting to escort you out, Grace said, gesturing toward 2 venue security guards who had positioned themselves near the entrance. Your belongings from the bridal suite have been packed and will be delivered to your car. Derek looked from face to face, searching for any sign of sympathy or weakness. Finding none, his expression hardened into pure hatred. You'll regret this, Phyllis. Nobody makes a fool of me. You managed that quite effectively on your own, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. Goodbye, Derek. As security approached, Derek straightened his jacket with exaggerated dignity. Keep the ring, he spat. Consider it payment for wasting 6 months of my life. With that parting shot, he turned and stalked toward the exit security, following close behind. As the doors closed behind him, I felt the tension drain from my body all at once, and I sank into a nearby chair. A spontaneous round of applause broke out among the guests, startling me. Judy squeezed my shoulder. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen you do, Phil. I looked around at the supportive faces of friends and family, many raising their glasses in solidarity. What had begun as a wedding celebration had transformed into something entirely different, a moment of truth, painful, but ultimately liberating. Samuel knelt beside my chair. You did well, Phyllis. The legal process will take some time, but with this evidence, I don't anticipate complications. Thank you, I whispered, overcome with gratitude for his presence and quick thinking. Thomas approached with a glass of champagne. I think you could use this, Mom. I accepted the glass, raising it slightly. To unexpected endings and new beginnings. As the initial shock began to wear off, Judy turned to the remaining guests. Well, I think we can all agree this wasn't the reception we expected, but there's still food, drinks, and cake. Well, some cake. Let's salvage what we can of this day. To my surprise, most guests stayed. The band, which had fallen silent during the confrontation, began playing again. Someone found an undamaged section of the wedding cake, and soon plates were being passed around. Grace sat beside me, taking my hand. Are you okay, Mom? Really? I considered the question carefully. My wedding day had turned into a public humiliation. The man I thought I loved had revealed himself as a con artist, interested only in my money. I was wearing a wine-stained dress and a partially destroyed reception, yet somehow I felt a profound sense of relief and even gratitude. I'm okay, I answered, squeezing her hand. Better than okay. I feel like I just escaped something terrible. As the evening progressed, what could have been the most devastating day of my life instead became a strange celebration of truth and solidarity. My loved ones gathered around, sharing stories and support, transforming a wedding reception into a liberation party. I had no way of knowing then how this dramatic day would change my life forever, or how the strength I discovered in myself would guide me through the challenges ahead. But sitting there surrounded by genuine love, I knew with certainty that while endings are painful, they also create space for new beginnings. In the days following what my friends now diplomatically called the incident, I moved through a strange fog of emotions, relief mingled with embarrassment, anger alongside gratitude, grief for what I'd thought was real, punctuated by moments of unexpected laughter at the sheer absurdity of it all. The legal process moved swiftly. Samuel's preparation and the overwhelming evidence meant the annulment was granted with minimal complications. The judge, upon viewing the video of Derek's tablecloth tirade, commented that in 30 years on the bench, she'd never seen such a clear-cut case of fraudulent intent. Derek made one attempt to contest the annulment, filing a counter-petition claiming emotional distress and seeking financial compensation for his contributions to the relationship. Samuel quickly presented evidence of Derek's pattern of targeting wealthy women, including testimony from one of his previous wives who came forward after hearing about my case. She wants to remain anonymous, Samuel explained, but she reached out because she wishes someone had warned her before she married him. The judge dismissed Derek's counter-petition, granted the annulment, and extended the restraining order for a full year. Just like that, my 6-hour marriage was legally erased as if it had never happened. The emotional erasure, however, proved more complicated. I feel so stupid, I confessed to Judy during one of our many debriefing sessions over wine at my kitchen table. How did I not see through him? Because he was good at what he did, she replied firmly. Con artists are professional manipulators. They study their marks, tell them exactly what they want to hear, and create a perfect illusion. But all the signs were there, I insisted. The rushed relationship, his sudden interest in my finances after Eleanor's inheritance, his lavish spending with my money. Hindsight is 20/20, Phil, Don't beat yourself up for being open to love. That's not a character flaw. Though I knew Judy was right, the embarrassment lingered particularly when well-meaning friends and acquaintances inquired about the wedding. Word had spread quickly through our social circles, and while most people were supportive, I could sense the underlying curiosity and pity in their questions. "Have you heard anything more from him?" my neighbor Barbara asked when I ran into her at the grocery store 3 weeks after the incident. "No," I replied. "The restraining order seems to be working." "Well, if you ask me, you dodged a bullet," she said, patting my arm. "Better to find out on day 1 than year 10, right?" Her comment, though, kindly highlighted the public nature of my humiliation. Everyone knew, everyone had an opinion, everyone wanted details. I began avoiding social gatherings, preferring the safety of my home, where I could process my feelings without an audience. My children worried about my isolation, calling daily and dropping by frequently with transparent excuses. "I was just in the neighborhood," Thomas would say, despite living across town. "I made too much lasagna," Grace would claim, arriving with enough food to feed a family of 6. Their concern touched me deeply, but I needed time alone to rediscover who I was after months of molding myself to be Derek's perfect partner. One rainy afternoon about 6 weeks after the wedding, I found myself sorting through Eleanor's papers that Mr. Abernathy had delivered. Among the legal documents and financial records, I discovered a small journal bound in soft leather. Inside, in my aunt's elegant handwriting, were her thoughts on love, and the wisdom she'd accumulated over her 85 years. One passage in particular caught my attention. "The most valuable gift we can give ourselves is the courage to begin again." I've started over so many times, after heartbreaks, after failures, after losses that felt unsurvivable. Each time I discovered that the self that emerged was stronger and wiser than before. The pain doesn't disappear, but it transforms into something useful: discernment. Eleanor's words resonated deeply. I had indeed begun again after Alan's death, finding a new rhythm to my days. Now I needed to begin again after Derek's betrayal, this time with the discernment my aunt mentioned. The journal became my companion as I started rebuilding. I joined a support group for victims of financial and emotional fraud, discovering I was far from alone in my experience. The stories shared in our weekly meetings were remarkably similar: charming partners, whirlwind romances, and elaborate schemes targeting assets. Predators like Derek target strong, capable women who have built something valuable, explained Dr. Levine, the psychologist who facilitated our group. Your success attracted him, not your vulnerability. Remember that. This perspective shift helped immensely. Instead of seeing myself as a gullible victim, I began to recognize that I had been targeted precisely because of my strengths: my financial stability, my independence, my openness to connection. Through the group, I met Linda, a retired professor who had lost her entire retirement savings to a man she'd met on a cruise. Despite her devastating loss, she had found purpose in educating others about relationship fraud. "Would you consider sharing your story at one of our community workshops?" she asked after a particularly powerful group session. "Especially since you managed to stop him before he got what he wanted. That's rare and valuable." The thought of publicly discussing my experience terrified me, but Eleanor's journal entry about transformation echoed in my mind. Perhaps this was how my pain could become useful. My first presentation at the senior center was awkward and emotional. I stumbled over details, teared up twice, and thought I'd never get through it. But afterward, 3 women approached me privately to share concerns about relationships they were in. 2 of them later ended those relationships after identifying red flags similar to Derek's behavior. That workshop led to others. I partnered with a local financial literacy program to develop a curriculum specifically addressing financial protection for older adults entering new relationships. Samuel volunteered his time to provide legal guidance, and before long, our Love or Money workshops were being requested by community centers throughout the Portland area. Through this work, I reclaimed my confidence and discovered a new purpose. The inheritance that had made me a target became a resource for helping others protect themselves. I established a small foundation in Eleanor's name to fund educational programs about financial abuse prevention. As months passed, I began socializing again, no longer defined by the incident in my own mind or in others' perceptions. I was now Phyllis who runs those helpful workshops, rather than poor Phyllis who married that con man. 1 year to the day after my non-wedding, Judy insisted on taking me to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. An unanniversary celebration, she called it. As we clinked glasses of expensive champagne, she smiled warmly. Look at you now, Phil. Teaching workshops, running a foundation, helping others. Eleanor would be so proud. I think she somehow knew. I confessed, fingering the small pendant I now wore daily. A silver key that had been Eleanor's, symbolizing unlocking wisdom and possibility. Not about Derek specifically, but about the challenges I'd face. That's why she left me her journal along with the money. Well, she clearly knew you had the strength to handle whatever came your way, Judy replied, and she was right. Later that evening, I stood on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. I thought about the journey of the past year, from the humiliation of that tablecloth being yanked away to the steady rebuilding of my life and sense of self. Derek had intended to take everything from me, but in his failure, he had inadvertently given me gifts I never expected: deeper connections with friends and family, a new purpose that honored Eleanor's legacy, and most importantly, a profound trust in my own resilience. I smiled, thinking of the countless women I'd now helped through sharing my story. The tablecloth incident that had once felt like my greatest humiliation had become the opening chapter of my most meaningful contribution. My phone buzzed with a text from a woman I'd met at last week's workshop. Just wanted you to know I ended things with Jim today after he started pressuring me about my house. Your story gave me courage. Thank you. As I typed a supportive reply, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. Life rarely follows the path we expect, but sometimes the detours lead us exactly where we need to be. What has your experience taught you about trusting your instincts? Have you ever had a moment when something painful ultimately led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear this message of hope after heartbreak. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes our worst moments become the foundation for our greatest strength.